In this video, I talk about whether you can have too many hobbies. We all have a finite amount of time and, frankly, money/resources in our lives. In any given day, we all get the same 24 hours. That's the way it works. Some of us have many more responsibilities, family, jobs that take up a lot of time, things like that. Some of us don't. Some of us have more money, some of us don't. But the fact of the matter is that these two things are finite. So when you want to really start to get into a hobby, you have to take time from your free time to be able to do that. And then if you want to get into another hobby, you now have to split your free time with the other hobby. And if you want to get into another hobby, now you have to split the... And you see how this goes. It just keeps going. You have only so much free time, and you have only so much money. So the question is that, like, what's the right amount of hobbies for you? For me, it seems to be two. My two hobbies. And I think that there are kind of hobbies, your main hobbies, and then there's things that you're interested in. I would say that biking is something that's not a hobby, but it's something that I do. I have a bike. I ride my bike from time to time, sometimes for fitness, sometimes for fun, sometimes just to get across town or whatever. But that's not a hobby, in my opinion, for me. Now, if a person rides, hundreds of miles a week and has the fancy outfit, the whole deal, and the hat, and has a really super crazy expensive bike and spends a lot of time working on it, then that's going to be a hobby for that person. But for me, in the situation, it's the differentiation between hobbies and interests. I have two hobbies. One is obviously tabletop wargaming, which kind of makes sense because, this is a tabletop wargaming channel. The other hobby is video/photo, which I suppose because of the channel also sort of makes sense. A third hobby that I find very interesting that I would love to get into is, strangely enough, drone racing. Like the whole concept of those little quadcopters that you build and put together, and then you have the goggles that go on, so you're like flying the thing first person, almost like a video game, except it's a real video game, and you might run into a tree or whatever. That whole thing just really fascinates me, and I'm really interested. I watch videos about it sometimes on YouTube. I keep up with the technologies, the goggles are getting better, what the types of cameras that they put on them are and that kind of stuff. And I pay attention to that kind of thing, and I'm really interested in it. But I've decided that for me in my life, I can have two hobbies. So I've got wargaming and I've got video/photo. So those are my hobbies. Maybe you've got more time and you can maybe pull off three hobbies. Now, obviously, you can do as many hobbies as you want. But then the question becomes, how difficult is it to actually do well or even do enough at any given one of those hobbies? So we all, generally, if we're into this hobby, we want to get better at painting. We want to get better at building and converting and kit bashing and all that kind of stuff. We want to get better at playing, a better strategist, someone who can see the battlefield and kind of understand what needs to be done and use the right strategies. We'd like to get better. We enjoy doing it. I enjoy doing it. For some people, the competition and that's the real big thing. For me, I enjoy the game, and I enjoy the paint, and I enjoy the build. But, I also want to get better at the paint and the build specifically. And if I don't ever really get that great at the gaming portion, that's fine. As long as I'm having a good time, I'm good with it. With photography/video, I want to be able to get new equipment. I want to learn new techniques, new pieces of software, editing and whatever, that kind of stuff. I want to learn more about lighting and stuff like that. So you want to get better generally when you're trying to do a hobby, if it's a hobby like that. Even if you get into something that's generally kind of passive, like if you're into watching television or if you're into watching movies, you want to be able to watch more movies and be able to kind of look at them maybe a little bit more analytically or a little bit more critically, as opposed to just letting every movie that comes out through Hollywood or any other place just wash over you randomly. You want to say, well, I want to look at good movies. I want to watch movies that I really enjoy. And I want to be able to speak about why I don't like a movie as opposed to maybe why I do, or something along those lines. there's growth. In any hobby, there should be some kind of growth. However, if you have, say, 12 hobbies, it's going to be really hard to grow much in any of them if you try to do them all even vaguely equally. If you have, let's say, 12 different hobbies and you've decided, well, I'm really only just going to focus on these two, well, and the rest of them maybe are interests, like biking for me, but they're not really hobbies. But if you go hardcore into, I do this on Monday nights, and then I do this on Tuesday nights, and I do this on Thursday, if you have, say, more than 7 of them, all of a sudden you're running out of nights in the week. So, you have to sort of figure that issue out. For me, I realized this years ago where I was playing video games, I was playing lots of board games and stuff like that. I was playing tabletop wargaming. I was also trying to paint my tabletop wargame stuff. I was trying to learn more about computers and things like that. I was doing all these different things and I was hopping all over the board. There's something to be said about the concept of jack of all trades, master of none. Now, that being said, I'm a big fan of being a jack of all trades. And I think there's a TED talk that I'll link to down below from a woman talking about the concept of being a multi-potentialite. And I like to sometimes think of myself as that to some degree, and I don't think that it's super important to only focus on one specific thing in your life so that you can master it and be the best at it. I'm not into that. But the concept is that you do sometimes have to rein in it a little bit if you want to be able to focus properly. And for each person, it's a different level. Like I said, maybe you've got a whole bunch of kids and a job that takes up a lot of time and all kinds of stuff. You have lots of other responsibilities and things you have to do. So you have to decide what's the one hobby, at least for now, until maybe the kids get older. What's the one hobby I want to focus on? And hopefully, if you're me, hopefully that's going to be wargaming, because I think that wargaming is a great hobby, and that's why we're kind of all here on the channel. But the fact is that you need to kind of narrow that down. Now, I don't have any kids, my wife and I, so that's why I can say I would really like to kind of deep dive into these two. If I didn't want to necessarily deep dive as much, I could probably make it 3 different hobbies that I could focus on. But really, you have to be able to sit down and look at it and go, what do I want to get from the hobby? Just besides enjoyment, do you want to grow at it? Do you gain enjoyment from that? Because really, enjoyment is the final kind of thing in the hobby, certainly. You shouldn't do a hobby that you hate. That doesn't make any sense. But if it's a hobby that you get the enjoyment from the fact that you're getting better at it, that's great. If you're, growing in general in the hobby, that's great, but usually growth means you have to spend more time and potentially resources to do such a thing. So when I read comments in the videos from people saying, I just wish, that I had more time, I wish I had more time to be able to do this kind of stuff. Like I said, we all have roughly the same amount of time, at least in any given day. And you have to then look at and see, what are my responsibilities? What much free time do I have left? And then at that point, even though none of us loves to choose, you have to choose. You have to sit down and say, with the free time that I have, I'm going to do this. Maybe it's you're going to start working out a whole bunch and get real buff and healthy, or maybe you're going to take up singing or painting, or you're just going to watch as much television as you can possibly, and then write a blog about it or whatever. I mean, that kind of stuff. All of those things can be hobbies. And so you kind of have to sit down and look at it and say, is wargaming one of my main hobbies? How many main hobbies can I have? Is there any way that I can kind of relate them together? That's really helped me with the video audio or the video, photo audio, whatever thing that I'm doing here. And then my wargaming, they kind of intertwine because that's why I'm doing it. So that's it's almost as if I have 1.5 hobbies. You could almost say that. And if you can kind of double dip that way, that's great. Take a look, really sit down and spend some time. Maybe write a list if you're a list writing person, and figure out exactly, is this the right hobby for you? And I hope it is, because I think it's a great hobby. And if it is it the only hobby? Do you have other hobbies that you can also sort of sneak in there? Or do these things just become interests? Sitting down and being critical and thinking about it, maybe even, like I said, writing down a list, I think it can help you determine where you want to go forward and how you're going to grow.